Welcome to another segment of ACRP TV. Today, our spotlight is on the importance of PIs in decentralized clinical trials. It's an area that's sometimes been overlooked. Obviously, PIs are critical in a clinical trial, but decentralized clinical trials are sort of a brave new world for PIs, and there's a possibility that we haven't really addressed the issue enough. So to help rectify that, we've got a good guest with us today, Adam Samson, who's the Director of Clinical Operations at Curebase. Hey, Adam, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Michael. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, now you know the subject matter. Let's jump right in and talk about, is this an area that maybe has been overlooked a bit?
I think, yeah, as we've transitioned a lot to, a couple years ago, the word decentralized trials, right, wasn't even in the lexicon for a lot of folks. And now transitioning into virtual trials, which is just fantastic, giving additional options to patients and so on. I think one thing that we're kind of being a little not quite, perceptive about enough is this idea that PIs working in a remote environment, it's much different than working, in a typical clinical trial setting where they're down the hall from the coordinators. So ensuring that PI oversight is there and is adequate is something that really you have to be thoughtful about up front, and you have to do some additional training for the PI and site staff to make sure that it's really done well.
And it's a critical topic. I mean, you know as better than I do, we already have a one and done issue with PIs as it is. There's a lot of turnover with PIs who arguably some are doing a great job and they keep coming back to do trials, but there are many who will go into it not knowing really what they're up against. They'll do one, find it frustrating for whatever reason, and not do any more. This is only going to make that more complicated if they don't know what they're getting into. So, I mean, what would you suggest for both sides of the equation? You mentioned training. What do we need to do as an industry to address this one and done issue, particularly as it relates to decentralized clinical trials, which are clearly on the rise?
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, Michael, which is we have to set PIs up for success, whether it's virtual or traditional model. And I think that, the virtual model actually gives us a lot of opportunity to take first-time PIs, get them up to speed with this new model and show them that they can integrate this as part of their normal clinical practice even. And perhaps, we get PIs who otherwise wouldn't, because we can support them with remote staff and other means. So when it comes to making sure that we have our PIs ready to go, we actually like to set up a PI oversight plan, similar to how you'd have like a monitoring plan or a data management plan, something that really defines, what does communication look like? Is it weekly meetings? How are coordinator staff that are working remotely with the PI? How are they able to contact the PI when needed? What do notifications look like on the patient side for the PI? Again, they can't go pick up the chart down the hall. So if there's an adverse event, there needs to be notifications in place, and the PI needs to have, ready access to those files. The other big piece around training is making sure that there are well-defined roles and responsibilities for that PI. So they really understand, beyond just the typical delegation log, which is great for documentation purposes, but it doesn't really get into that granular level detail that's going to help to set that PI up for success, so that they can, kind of operate within this type of environment.
And finally, I want to ask you, I like to talk to people in this area. We're talking about decentralized clinical trials. It's a term that's bandied about a bit to mean a lot of things to different people. And I probably should have asked you this at the outset, actually, but as I know you're a proponent of decentralized clinical trials, and they're pretty clearly here to stay. Do you foresee there's a time where there'll be less and less use for sites, or are you talking about a hybrid situation? Do you think physical sites will always be an important part of a clinical trial?
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. And being somebody who, I was a coordinator to start with, and, I know the value of what it is to be on site with participants, and that's never going to go away. And I think that, a big thing here is we want to provide additional choice to patients and participants in clinical trials. So if they want to do certain things at home and certain things on site, it gives some flexibility. But ultimately, having that, one-on-one connection and having the very knowledgeable site staff there to interact with folks is really important. And most of what we do at Curebase is actually that hybrid models where we work, we might have a virtual PI, but there are sites that we work with as well in a more traditional way to see patients for certain procedures.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This has been our ACRP TV spotlight on the importance of PIs in decentralized clinical trials. Hopefully, we're raising awareness of this important issue. We've been speaking with Adam Samson, who's the Director of Clinical Operations with Curebase. Adam, thank you once again for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Michael. Thanks, everybody.